Welcome to the 2022 Williamsville Central School District Board of Education Candidates Night, hosted by the Williamsville PTSA Council. My name is Ona Strang, and I am the co-president of the Williamsville PTSA Council. I would like to thank all the candidates for their participation this evening and the League of Women Voters for moderating this event. At this time, I turn to Terry Parks from the League of Women Voters to provide the overall overview of the rules for this evening. Terry.
Thank you. And good evening a second time, folks. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that encourages informed, active participation of citizens in government. The League works to influence public policy through education and advocacy. Moderating school board candidates meetings is only one of our many functions. Membership is open to everyone. Learn more about the League at our website, www.lwvbn.org. The ground rules for tonight's candidate forum. The League of Women Voters will not permit substitutes for candidates at any of its forums or debates, or those that we do with other co-sponsors, such as the PTA Council of the Williamsville Schools. A candidate must be present at a forum in order to present their views. Presentation should be strictly confined to issues, not personalities. The order of opening statements tonight was determined by the candidate's placement on the ballot. Election material is not permitted in this room, and this event will end at 9 p.m. The Williamsville Schools is making the only authorized recording of this event. Only licensed media, including TV, radio, and newspapers, are entitled to air a portion of the recording, in keeping with FCC rules. Others who air this recording must do so in its entirety. No one is permitted to publicly display edited footage. We request that the audience members turn off their cell phones at this time and keep them turned off throughout the event. We also request that you refrain from applause until everyone has finished making their closing statements, so that we have as much time for the candidates to respond to your questions as possible. Sarah Smith Ronan is our timekeeper this evening. She will raise a yellow paddle when the speaker has 30 seconds and a stop card when time has expired. The candidates are expected to stop when completing the sentence being spoken at the time. Each candidate shall have 3 minutes to make an opening statement. Biographical sketches and platform outline are generally what's presented. And each candidate shall have 2 minutes to respond to each question. I will be asking written questions submitted by members of the live audience and alternating with pre-submitted questions from the online PTSA Council Google form. Questions have been screened for vulgarity, profanity, appropriateness, and redundancy. The questions must be directed to all candidates, and they will be asked of the candidates in rotating order. And each candidate will finally be able to make a 2-minute closing statement to summarize thoughts or reiterate points that they want to stress. This forum is designed to be a dialogue between the public and the candidates. And our candidates will make their opening statements. We'll begin with Stuart Buelan.
Good evening. I just want to thank the League of Women's Voters and the PSATA for allowing us to have this debate, or at least conversation. Let me introduce myself. Again, my name is Stuart Buelan. I'm a proud father of 2 children, Emily, who is 22, and David, who is a student in the life skills program at Williamsville North. I've lived in Williamsville for 23 years, and I am a proud resident of Williamsville. What I bring to the table, I think, is this. I bring a unique perspective. I'm the father of 2 special ed students. I'm a history teacher in Buffalo for the past 24 years, and I have a deep understanding how education works. My goals are pretty simple. I want to help students and teachers make up for the learning loss that they've suffered the last couple of years because of the pandemic. I want to make sure the district becomes a leader in special education services and in student achievement. And I want to bring an openness and transparency to board decision-making and improve student outcomes for all students. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Teresa Ann Leatherbarrel.
Thank you. So I want to say thank you to Terry from the League of Women Voters, to PTSA Council, and to all in attendance here tonight. I'd also like to acknowledge my family. They're a big reason why I serve, because of our value for public education. My husband, Jack, is here tonight, along with 2 of my children. Our daughter, Serena, is still at college. She'll be done Sunday. But I'm happy to have my son, Samuel, here tonight, home from SUNY Brockport, and my daughter, Maggie, who is a freshman at North. So I'm here tonight with 6 years of experience as a school board member, 3 years as board president, 18 years as a professional educator, graduate work in school administration, a master's in curriculum and instruction, and my most rewarding experience, that of being a mother for the past 20 years. And I want to just say that I'm most proud of that, because I've done an amazing job with our 3 humans. I also want to share with you that I have the availability, the dedication, and the knowledge to continue to serve as a highly effective school leader. In school leadership, there is an emphasis on the hand, head, and heart of leadership, and it has been my lifelong practice to do this work. Much of what we do as school board members is listen. We listen to our superintendent, we listen to our staff, we listen to our legal counsel, we listen to the state education department, and most of all, we listen to our community and our parents. I'm here tonight to listen more than I speak, and I welcome the opportunity to be here and answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Christina Bleckinger.
Thank you, Terry, and thank you, PTSA, and thank you all for being in attendance this evening. My name is Christina Bleckinger, and I'm the proud parent of a student in our district. My son attends Forest Elementary and will be attending Mill next year. We have lived in the district for over 18 years and enjoy all this community has to offer. I'm an IT sales exec for a global company and bring leadership, tech savviness, attention to detail, analytic-based thinking, and problem solving to the table. I'm also an executive director for a student wellness program that brings obstacle course fitness, nutrition, and mindfulness to schools in the area. My top priority is student and teacher health and wellness and excellence in education. My leadership style is intentional, authentic, and genuine. My decisions will be child-centered, reliable, and responsive to the needs of the community. My goals for my term are to help create solutions to improve our district's nutrition program, to support programs and curriculums that assist our students and teachers' social and emotional well-being, and to support creating an educational environment for academic success. These kinds of supports reflect a whole school approach to a whole child development that maximizes opportunities for all children to excel. I'm running for the board to be a voice for you, the community, and with children as my ultimate focus. And I really want to hear about your concerns and needs throughout my term. I look forward to working together with others, parents, teachers, district staff, and local legislature to achieve success and accomplish the board's goals. I have the motivation and the energy to be a valuable board member and will commit the time necessary to be an informed and effective leader. I believe in quality public education and will support our district's missions and beliefs, and I'm excited to contribute and improve our Williamsville schools. I look forward to hearing your questions tonight and providing you with a clear understanding of my perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. And our 4th candidate is Jessica Fuscolo.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for attending, and thanks to the League of Women Voters for facilitating and the PTSA Council for organizing this event. My name is Jessica Fascolo. I'm a mom of 2 children in the district, with the youngest being 6 years old, and the daughter of a tenured elementary school teacher in a New York public school. I also attended public school myself, along with all of my siblings and both of my parents. I'm originally from Long Island, but decided to stay here after attending law school because it seemed to be a fantastic place to raise a family. In particular, when it came time to purchase a home, our main criteria was one in the Williamsville School District. Public schools are powerful tools to establish strong relationships in diverse community like ours, provide opportunities for growth and social mobility, and invest in the next generation. I believe public schools are our greatest public institutions and should be fiercely protected. Student success is community success. What's more, when our public schools are thriving, our communities are safer, stronger, and our property values are higher. I'm a lifelong learner with a passion for reading books about organizational leadership, personal growth, and the human connection. I care deeply about our students and our community. But I never thought I'd be sitting here. Yet here I am, running for school board because I saw a void that urgently needed to be filled, and the only sidelines I enjoy sitting on are those of a court or a field my children are playing on. Throughout the last several years, I have been a regular critic of decisions made by the board, lack of action, creative thinking, urgency, and perhaps most of all, empathy. Our school doors were closed for far too long to our students. The voices of parents were disregarded, and some stayed silent to avoid being labeled. This board and its leadership acted powerless to affect any change, yet we watched other public schools across the state restore full-time in-person learning through using innovative and creative solutions, while ours maintained a failing status quo. The lack of access to full-time school took a significant toll on our family. We were desperate for solutions. When faced with alternative options like private school or relocating, we declined. This is our family's home, and the school community is our friends and our neighbors. I was not willing to give up on this district. I decided the right thing for me to do was to stay, run for board, and be the change I wanted to see in our district. I want to see our district be a leader, not a follower. I want this district's vast size and resources to be its greatest strength and tool to solve problems. We are too big should never be a reason why we cannot do something. My priorities are to identify and address grade level and individual learning gaps. I think loss is the wrong term because it suggests students receive the education in the first place. Restore trust in the community through transparency and communication, and create more equity of opportunity among and policies within our district buildings. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now for the questions. I gave each person a green card, and the purpose of the green card is if you would like me to repeat a question, just hold up your card and I will repeat it. But since I haven't asked the question, you don't need a card yet. Stuart gets our first question. Actually, I should say, Stuart, you will have an opportunity to answer this question first, and we will just go down the line. You don't need to wait. When Stuart finishes, Teresa, you can go on, and okay. That way we'll be able to get through more questions. So, have you prepared? No, I'm sorry. How have you prepared for a seat on the school board?
I think that's a really good question. I'm not sure you can ever prepare totally because I've never sat on a board before. I'll be honest with you, but I've done my research. I've become educated about what's going on in the district. I have a child in the district, and I've paid attention, and I know what's happening. I think that's the best way you can be prepared to do this is by paying attention and knowing what the issues are that are facing the district and how to hopefully solve them.
Okay. And just for everyone, you're not talking to me. Unfortunately, I don't get a vote in this district. So remember that there are going to be a lot of people looking at you, and probably are. Okay, Teresa.
So thank you for the question. So 6 years ago, when I was thinking about running for the board, I began preparing by first attending PTA meetings so that I could listen to what was going on in the community. At that time, I had a child at elementary, middle school, and high school. So there was plenty of meetings for me to attend. I also was attending school board meetings regularly. along with Mary Beeger, my partner in crime at the time. We would come regularly. It was before Zoom. We were always here, always listening. You know, a common thread that I hear is that people run for board because they feel there's a deficit on the current board. And that was no different from when I ran too. So I definitely understand that reasoning. And I've had conversations with some of the board members who have joined recently, and they said the same thing. We thought there was a problem. We thought something wasn't right. You know, we joined, we realized everything is really going the way it's supposed to be going. Minus the pandemic, right? So in addition to that preparation, I also made sure I attended the introductory meeting that's held through the Erie County Association of School Boards. They provide a very nice orientation event. So I made sure to go to that. I got online and checked out NYSBA, which is our New York State School Board Association. They provide ample resources for anyone who is interested in seeking a board seat. And I also spoke with board members in other districts to find out, you know, the backstory, what is it I really need to know, and, you know, had those important conversations. Once joining the board, I made sure to attend the NYSBA conferences. I've attended the trainings regularly at ECASB, and this year I'm being honored as a Rising Star Award for the number of trainings that I've continued to attend.
I have to admit, this has not been a candidacy that I've pursued desired to do for the past several years. This is something that I've been thinking of the past several months. And during that time, I have gotten to know the school's vision and goals and policies, its current successes and challenges. I took the opportunity to learn the educational environment of our community and the issues at hand. And also, I'm willing to participate in professional development and commit the time and energy to be an effective leader. Thank you.
I have served on boards before and have seen board functions in the business world. So I have some familiarity with how they work, how voting works. As far as specifically for school boards, I also reviewed the NYSBA website, looked through what the qualities were for effective board members, and how you can be effective. There's training materials on there that I read through, and I do understand that there will be training that's required as a prerequisite for the seat. I also read through the board policies to familiarize myself with them, as I did hear some concerns from the community about certain board policies. I wanted to make sure I understood them. I did attend board meetings, mostly virtual in the last several years, also in person whenever possible, in order to get a sense of how our board was functioning. And I communicated with the board regularly through written email communications and different members of the administration here by phone and otherwise. So those are some of the things that I did to prepare for this. And talking to parents. I mean, parents talk to each other pretty regularly because we felt alone. You know, we wanted to talk about what was going on with your kid. How are you managing this? You know, what kind of information did you get home on the hybrid school days? So we were just always talking to each other and trying to figure out better strategies to support our kids.
Okay. All right, question 2, we'll go first to Teresa. There have been calls for increased transparency from the school board. Please cite 2 specific ways you plan to facilitate that and still maintain the confidentiality necessary for sensitive topics like litigation and employment matters.
Thank you for that question. So recently, going back even before the pandemic, our board asked for us to begin a strategic planning process because the original mission, vision, and goals were established in 1995, which is the year I graduated high school. So that work did start with our former superintendent. At that time, we had a consulting firm that came in, and then COVID happened, work was put on hold. We went ahead and continued that process with our new superintendent. Back February of this year, our board approved the initial plan, and that plan is the work of our community, our stakeholders, which included our teachers, our students, our parents, and our district leadership. Communication is one of the pillars of that plan, which when I think of transparency, I think of what is not being communicated that our stakeholders would like to be able to hear. So that plan is available on our site. So the first thing I want to make sure I do if I am elected to continue on the board is, as a board member, make sure that the goals, which I see 3 of them, goals 1A, 1B, and 1C, are continued. And we will be following up with our superintendent for the progress of that goal. The second thing I want to do is continue our community forums. We've had 2 this year. We had 1 in person in the fall, and we had 1 virtual. We received feedback from both of those. The feedback that we received from different stakeholders was that they felt more comfortable at the in-person. There were people that did attend the virtual one. Well, I'm sorry, it was held in person, but the format was a hybrid, right? And it was also here at district office, and the vibe was a little bit more sterile. It wasn't as comfortable as we would have liked it to be. So I want to make sure that we go back to a community forum that is more approachable, and we want to include more back and forth conversation with that. Thank you.
I would agree with that. Communication is definitely important for dealing with transparency issues and questions. I would, allow the members of the public to speak on any agenda item, making sure the agenda items are posted ahead of time so they have the time to research and have questions to come to our meetings. Also building strong relationships with the community, being out in the community, introducing ourselves, and getting to know the parents' concerns and issues and addressing them as best as we can. And also to allow each member of the public to speak on any agenda item before or during the consideration of the item. Thank you.
Okay.
I think that the first order of business is to change the current board rules for community comments. It feels pretty deflating when you participate in public expression and nobody responds to you. There's no opportunity for discussion or feedback. There's no opportunity for the community to ask questions about agenda items, either after the discussion takes place or during the discussion. I think real-time feedback is important. To be able to submit questions in advance requires a deep understanding of the issue that you might not have until you hear the discussion at the board meeting. So there should be opportunity for respectful back and forth discussion before voting takes place or consideration of any particular topic. I think communication is two-way. And that includes, listening, getting feedback, responding, and really trying to reach a deeper understanding. I have felt that, our current communication model is very one-directional, and there's an opportunity for transparency by really digging into the issues, concerns, underlying fears that may be existing in the community by having that dialogue.
I think it's a really good question. I think transparency for me is being available to the constituents, people that want to know what I'm thinking and why I'm thinking it. And after making a decision, I'll be more than happy to discuss it with anyone who wants to discuss it with me. You have to be open to the stakeholders. Those are the people we answer to. They have questions, we need to answer them, as long as it's within the parameters of the law and we can share it with them. It's just being available and being open enough to discuss why and how you made a decision.
Okay, so we're on to question 3, and it will go first to Christina. What role do you believe parents play in their children's education?
I think parents and teachers play a very important role in the decision-making in their education. I know personally, I'm very involved in what my son, is learning in class. I like to know what subjects they're covering and what issues and what solutions they're providing for our students, and specifically for my son. So parents definitely play an important role in the education, and in forums like these, they can also bring up curriculum questions and issues to us board members, and we can have that open discussion concerning that.
Jessica?
I think a parent's role in the education of their child is to partner with their teacher, with their child's teacher on an equal basis, to understand what is being taught in the classroom so that can be supported at home. If we look at, what we are investing in our students during the school day, we need to be able to continue that at home in a meaningful way, and make sure that we're all on the same page. So in order to really be an equal partner with teachers, parents need to have information about what the curriculum is, how we can support that information at home. If there's any questions about the curriculum and whether it's appropriate for that particular student, given cultural concerns, religious concerns, or maturity issues and things like that, like we get into topics like sex education, it's really important to make sure that parents are equal partners with teachers and administrators so everyone can help support the child.
Stuart.
I think education is a three-way street. You have parents, teachers, and students. When they're all working together, that is when education works the best, and they all need to be involved. Parents play a strong role, students play a strong role, teachers do. Everyone has a role, and when they're all walking together, like for lack of expression, walking hand in hand, education works the best. And when that breaks down, that's when education doesn't seem to work as well. So I really think parents play a huge role, but again, all three partners, students, parents, and teachers, need to work together to make it all work.
I appreciate Stuart's response. I remember back in my elementary education bachelor's program, we referred to that as a three-legged stool. And I think we probably graduated around the same year. But that was the three-legged stool of the parent, the teacher, and the student all holding up that seat. I think it's really important that we recognize that our parents are our first teachers. So the majority of learning happens from birth to age 4 or 5 when our students are coming to school. And that includes language acquisition, developing that love of literacy, even things as simple as being able to recognize how to properly hold a book, whether to open it from left to right or right to left, the print awareness, letters, sounds, basic numeracy. We also count on our families to instill behaviors and culture. And in this community, we're so blessed because our culture is so diverse. So when our students come in, they are bringing all different types of traditional values because everyone's tradition has value. The partnership piece as the child goes through school becomes more and more important every single year as they head towards their graduation. And so it's so important for our parents to be a partner and to be involved and to stay involved. So often we see at the PTSA meetings, packed rooms for the elementary schools. We get to high school, sometimes it dwindles down to 6 or 10 people. Staying involved, attending conferences, sending WITS mails, going directly to the source when you have a question, going directly to your principal if you have a question about something that you want to question from your teacher. So that partnership, I agree with Stuart, is extremely important.
Okay, so question 4 goes first to Jessica. How should the district address the learning gaps that exist from the last 2 years?
I'm glad you said learning gaps because that's what it is. I think that we need to spend a good amount of time understanding those gaps and really defining them by grade level and by individual students. I think that there were certain grade levels that were disproportionately impacted by the pandemic-related policies with schools. Children of certain socioeconomic backgrounds that weren't able to get as much support as others were also disproportionately impacted. So I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all answer. And we need to better understand which grade levels need the investment and which students need the investment so that they're not perpetually falling behind and left behind as new generations of students come in without those same experiences. So I think it will take a considerable amount of time and some study to reflect what the impact is. And I think that impact should be shared with the community so everyone understands where their particular student and their particular grade level stands relative to what the standards were. Curriculums were pared down to fit into 2 days a week. I mean, that shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. What did we lose? We lost something. And knowing what that is, I think, is really important to moving forward.
Whether you call it a learning gap or a learning loss, it's definitely present. And there's no magic bullet to fix it. It's not going to take a day, a week, or a year. It might take 5 years. I think the thing that, as a teacher, what you have to do is your instruction is guided by data-driven instruction. You look at the data and you try to figure out where the gaps are or the losses are. And then you address those gaps or the loss. It will go by student, not by grade level, actually by individual student. And it's incumbent upon the district to make sure we set up programs that address this and create those points, those data points, so we can figure out what is missing and help to address that and fix it. And again, I just don't think there's a magic bullet. I don't think it will take a day, a week, or a year. It might take 2 or 3 to make up for this learning gap or loss, however you want to put it. But it's incumbent upon the district to find out who's affected by it and try to help them.
So the term I like to use is unfinished learning, because I do believe that words matter, and I don't like to speak of our children in a deficit model. I also don't like to use the phrase that they're behind, because that implies that we're competing. And I really believe in a culture where we all grow together instead of try to outshine each other. But regardless, I think what we need to do is look at our data, and that's what we have been doing here in Williamsville. Back a few months ago, we had a presentation from Dr. Buelan, our Assistant Superintendent of Learning and Curriculum, and we asked specifically for assessments that we don't typically hear about, because most of the assessments we would have typically used were not given during the past few years, like our Regents exams, for example. Or the students that took them was a very small cohort because it was optional for some of those exams. So what was told to the board in that presentation was very, transparent and available, was that our greatest deficit was actually with K and 1 in the area of letters, letter recognition and letter sounds, and early numeracy. So in terms of what can we do once we have the data, the most important thing we can do, which our community has always done, is support the investment of our students by voting yes on the budget. I think that's the main thing. Our budget allows us to provide supports along with the supports that came from the American Rescue Plan. So the learning labs, especially in the K-1 classrooms, which we were able to visit as a board at several of our schools, those will address those issues. And there's full details online of how the ARP funds were spent. A lot of that will go towards the summer as well for the programming. But yes, it may take several years. I agree. There's no one set solution. And I'm not going to have enough time to talk about social emotional learning, but that's a big piece of it too, because we know that many of our students suffered. And as a board, we recognize that.
I feel the biggest challenge right now is the urgent need for intervention and prevention strategies. So identifying the student needs, as Jessica mentioned, personalizing them and their instruction is effectively important to understand the areas where they may have gaps in understanding due to our distance learning. To additionally support students, such strategies as group tutoring and extended learning time opportunities can be provided. We can also consider building partnerships with community-based organizations that may provide opportunities for a larger number of students. And finally, surveying our teachers to understand the supports that they believe will be most useful and provide professional learning opportunities to support our teachers for these needs also. Thank you.
Did I do it wrong? We're on to the next question. All right. Question 5, Stuart first. What are your thoughts on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives like the one recently launched by the district?
I think they're crucially important. Listen, we have a very diverse district, people of all races and creeds, and it's really important that students see themselves in a classroom and in the curriculum. And if we don't do that, we're doing them a disservice. I think that students learn best when they see themselves in what they're studying. If they don't see what they are, they're not going to learn as well. I think diversity is incumbent upon the district, from the teaching force to everything else. The district needs to search out and find qualified minority candidates to be teachers. And that's not easy, but it needs to be done. And I think that diversity in teaching, just in curriculum, is crucial, that everyone gets to see who they are and then can take that away from that.
Thank you for that. So our board did pass a policy 3431 for diversity, equity, and inclusion. It calls for strong partnerships. It asks us to visualize successful futures for all students and provide a sense of belonging and self-worth. We also are pairing that with the work of the strategic plan. So another pillar, I mentioned communication earlier, but another pillar is the DEI framework, which we will be having DEI teams at every building that will then report back to the district so that when more plans go forward, they're involving more stakeholders. The work coming from New York State is based on the culturally responsive sustaining framework. This is available right on the New York State Education Department website. Our board recently held a retreat because we felt that us as board members needed to get a better understanding of what that culturally responsive sustaining educational framework was and what it was not. And one of my biggest takeaways from the retreat that we just had about a week ago was that it's not a curriculum. It's not another thing on someone's plate, but instead it is the plate. It's the framework for how we talk to our students. It's the welcoming and affirming environment that we want when parents walk in, so that when a student is looking around, whether it's in the library, the hallways, the classroom, they see something that represents who they are, because that matters. I'm a white girl. I haven't had to experience a lot of the things that many of our students have had to experience because of their identity. And so us doing that work is so important, and I'm proud to be a part of it.
Thank you, Teresa. Culturally relevant and sustaining curricula seek to encourage and incorporate a breadth of heritage practices and literacies, as you mentioned, in the classroom so that the students can see themselves in the material and they're empowered. They want to learn. They're excited about learning. So if we can engage them to inform our models, not only offering a responsive pedagogy of critical inquiry, as well as active learning, but also for more effectively helping them navigate those constructs and systems in place. Giving the teachers the opportunity and capacity to harness our Western New York as a lived-in curriculum, thereby bridging community to classroom. And this type of curriculum will allow our faculty to further mold and apply innovative paradigms, which go beyond the classroom and are envisioned to be embraced by others in the community. Supporting administrator and teacher professional development opportunities to gain knowledge on the CRSP framework, as well as fostering mentorships with teachers and programs. Implementing this curriculum in other districts and programs will be key in developing expertise. A shift of this magnitude will require a concentrated effort from the top down to ensure we have developed a tiered response across the district that engages the school board to each individual school administration, faculty, and stakeholders. So it's very refreshing and rewarding to hear. I didn't know you guys did that in your retreat. So it is nice to hear that the board members got that type of training and information. As I mentioned, it's important to do that from the top down. Thank you.
A lot of information.
What are your thoughts on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives like the one recently launched by the district?
Okay, so we're experiencing this in the business world pretty regularly. DE&I conversations and training have been done in a very concentrated way. It has been really eye-opening or a business perspective to learn about ways that we can attract and retain diverse talent by making sure that the way that we recruit talent is equitable and that our culture is inclusive in order to retain it. And I think those concepts will translate into a school culture as well, particularly for teachers. As I understand it, there is a projected teaching shortage in the next several years. We need to find ways to get more students interested in pursuing educational opportunities as careers. And if they can see it in the classroom, they can be it. So the more diverse teaching staff members that we have, the more I think we will attract, that career will be attractive and available, reachable to our students. We have such a diverse community here in Williamsville, and it is something to be proud of. We can learn so much from each other and become richer for it. I think that it's important to understand how students from different cultures may approach learning differently than others, how disciplinary action needs to be adapted to different students based on their culture. It's about bringing our educational model to a place where it can be inclusive for everyone and a place where we can continue to attract diversity as a district.
Okay, thank you. Teresa, describe your experience managing a team or an organization of professional employees.
Thank you for that question. So, as a school board president, I did a lot of management and leadership in that area. I want to make sure I'm prefacing to say that school board members are not employees of the district. We're not paid. I think that is, a disclaimer that needs to get out there. But in terms of leadership and leading, first of all, I lead with love and kindness. And I always presume positive intentions of the person I'm working with. This year on the board, we have teacher endorsed candidates, we have students first endorsed candidates, and I'm proud to say we all work well together. And I think that starts at the top. I made sure to have conversations with all of our board members when they were onboarding. We've had retreats throughout the year, and much of our retreats have been about building relationships, because when we can understand each other and see each other as human beings, we can see how there's so much more that we have in common than what might divide us. I also really value being on a board where we don't always agree on everything. I think that's really important. If everybody thought exactly the way I thought, I would not have an opportunity to learn and grow and expand my own thinking. So as an educator, continuous learning is very important and something I model. I make sure to model efficiency, effectiveness. We start on time, we end on time, we share all correspondences, we are transparent and honest with each other. We make sure all of our board documents, as you had spoke of before, Christina, are published on time and available for the public. And communicating, I do feel is a strength of mine. I stay calm in most situations. I have a good sense of humor, and I lead with love.
I've had multitude of different types of leadership experience, especially in the workplace, with leading various teams in the IT environment, from COBOL programmers to other team managers to project managers. And my style is the same, and it's mindful listening is involved, listening to their issues and concerns, also making sure that everything is transparent when it comes to rules and regulations and things that they have to be aware of. Also, performance, reviewing performance reviews with the team is important, and being a trustworthy and reliable leader are the types of qualities that I have. Thank you.
So my most recent example or experience managing professional employees, I manage a team of 25 people that are all professionals. Before that, I was a partner at a law firm where I created and managed the Associates Development Committee in order to help develop young lawyers in the law firm and help provide support. I bring a servant style leadership. I am a student of leadership, and I'm learning to adapt as times change and generations have different needs. But I see my role as a facilitator. I try to make sure that processes are efficient, that any roadblocks that are in anyone's way are promptly removed, that disputes between team members are resolved through discussion and negotiation. And I asked my team to tell me what support would look like for them in a particular situation. I believe in active listening and making sure that I am not bringing any of my own bias to the situation or assumptions about what any team member may need at any given time.
As a teacher, I've been a leader of classrooms. I've been a coach for many years, a debate coach, a basketball coach, but I've also ran the Bennett Law Magnet program in the city of Buffalo for 10 years. And I was in charge of helping lead that. And I think there were 11 teachers there, and that's sometimes like herding cats. But again, I believe, as our fellow candidates say, that you have to listen. You have to be a good listener. Before you can jump in and do anything, you have to listen and find out what the needs are before you can go and make changes. And again, it's about organization. It's about being on time. It's about being accountable to your fellow teammates, making sure that you're available to help them. Those are the things that good leadership is. And I am not a micromanager. I find out what the people do best and let them do it, because otherwise you're messing it up. You want the people that are good at what they do to do it. You don't want to step on their feet. So I think it's a combination of listening, empowering people like we've heard before. There's no secret here. It's really good listening, empowering people, and being accountable and willing to listen and take criticism. As a leader, sometimes criticism comes your way. You have to be able to take that constructively and then use it to the betterment of the team.
Christina, question 7. One of the roles of a school board member is to evaluate curriculum. Are there any changes to the current curriculum you would like to make?
Just off the knowledge of some of the elementary curriculum that my son has been exposed to, I have to learn about the other curriculums for middle school and high school. But I think just from the past 2 years, just incorporating more social and emotional type learning opportunities for our children, nutrition, what types of healthy snacks to choose. Also, I'd like to focus on nutrition for our school lunches. I know that's not so curriculum based, but it's something I think that when you have a healthy body, you have a healthy mind, and they're all connected. And just learning more about having an impact and a voice in the community and what that entails and how our students can do that.
I like the nutrition. Can I steal that? No. I, like Christina, have the most experience with the elementary school curriculum. So I'd be open to hearing and learning more about other curriculum changes or enhancements that the community would want to see. One thing that I've noticed is an emphasis on learning to read rather than reading to learn. And I do think that there's an opportunity to focus our curriculum away from some of those reader workshop type of canned videos that at least I've seen come home, to really instilling a love for learning with our kids and then building on that with reading, so that their foundational knowledge as they advance in grades is more concrete. Rather than just reading what the words are, they understand concepts that are taught in the books themselves, rather about, than John having a bicycle that he's riding. Maybe it could be something about American history, or something about science, and integrating more of a curriculum of substance to our reading programs.
So I've spent the last 24 years as a history teacher. I don't think we have enough time, or people would be bored what I want to change about the curriculum. But I think the biggest thing is that we need to stress critical thinking and job readiness. Because I can't tell you how many times college professors and employers have come to me and said, Mr. Buelan, what are you guys doing in high school? Why aren't these kids ready to be critical thinkers and job ready? And I think the way we do that is in giving different methods of learning, hands-on things, making sure the kids aren't sitting at their desk for 40 minutes, making sure they're moving around and really giving more hands-on experience. Like I said, though, I could go on for hours about the history curriculum and regions, but I think those are the big things, making sure that they're critical thinking and more job ready.
So I believe, if I heard correctly, the question started with one of our jobs as school members is to evaluate curriculum. Was that correct? That's how the question started? Okay. So I just want to clarify that, because I think that that's a little bit of a misunderstanding. As a school board, we don't evaluate the curriculum. What we do is we approve or reject the recommendations that come from our superintendent through what we have in Williamsville as the curriculum council. So our curriculum council is actually composed of students, parents, staff and school administrators, and they can make the recommendations for any additions to the curriculum outside of what New York State mandates. So I just wanted to offer that little point of clarification. I don't serve on the curriculum council. However, on the board, you read the reports. You have an opportunity to ask questions before the meeting, and then you do vote primarily on the professional development opportunities that are associated with those programs. Some of the shifts in learning recently is a move away from rote memorization to applications. We've seen that a lot in science, especially I know you haven't been able to visit your children's classrooms because of COVID. I have been fortunate to do so because I am on the school board, and we've seen a lot of shifts with a lot of application, hands-on, and there's been a lot of investment in materials so that our students could participate in hands-on things. I know you spoke about elementary, and pre-K to 2 is learning to read. 3 to 12 is reading to learn. Our college and career readiness programs are amazing. And I just want to say that my two that have gone on to college have both chosen paths based on electives that they experienced here at the high schools. So there's so many things that are available for our students that will open up for their future once they graduate.
Okay, thank you. So question 8 goes first to Jessica. What do you see as the biggest challenges facing the district in the short and long term?
In the short term, I think the biggest challenge is to restore our sense of school community, trusts, and relationships between the parents, faculty, students, and administration. I think everyone's been through a lot the last couple of years, and we need to work really hard in the short term to get us back to the community that we were before. The longer term, I think, is learning gaps, deficits, or opportunity areas, however you would want to characterize it. I think this is going to be a long-term problem that can compound itself if we don't act quickly. The other thing that I think is important to talk about is providing equal opportunities for student enrichment between district buildings. We have, I believe, 13 district buildings, and there are diverse number of opportunities that are available to students depending which building they attend. And I think there's a long-term and possibly midterm way to find some consistency between those opportunities rather than rely on open enrollment policy.
Okay. Stuart.
I think the biggest challenge right now is both long-term and short-term is making up for the learning gap. And again, it's not going to be an overnight thing. It's going to take some time, but we can definitely get started on it. The other thing, I think, another critical challenge is improving the special ed programs that are offered to our students. I'm a father of a student in the life skills program. I've seen firsthand what happens to special ed kids in this district. I think it's gotten better, but I think there's a long way to go. And I think that is a critical need that we need to improve. And I think the other thing is improve the diversity of the people sitting in front of the students. I think that's critical to help students learn, and having as many different viewpoints in front of them as possible. And to see people that look like themselves so they can really feel like they can achieve something outside of school.
So I think the short term is the unfinished learning, which we've already spoken about. I do believe that there has been a lot of issues with social emotional deficits as well that has been escalated because of the pandemic. But with the long term, I think we really need to look at the funding and the way public education is funded here in New York State. We were very fortunate this year with the governor's package, but the fact remains that the foundation aid formula is still very much flawed. Most of our public probably doesn't realize that our foundation aid formula is based on census data from the year 2000, and here we are in 2022. Our demographics here in Williamsville alone are very different than they were back in 2000, both with our number of free and reduced students receiving free and reduced lunch, which is difficult to calculate because the federal government wasn't asking for the numbers since they were providing meals for everyone, and the number of students receiving special education services, and English as a new language service. Those are often unmandated services, and that's really important. As you become more involved on the board, you'll have the opportunity to learn about that process. So this year I joined the legislative team through the Erie County Association of School Boards, and I have learned so much. Even though it's year 6 for me, I'm still enjoying the learning. And I got to participate in Lobby Day, which means I met with Assemblywoman McMahon, Senator Ed Bratt's office, and we were able to communicate our needs for the district, which we worked on in unison with our teachers and our school administrators from across the state. So advocating together for funding is going to be critically important in the future to maintain the quality programs that we offer here in Williamsville.
So long-term, again, student and teacher health and wellness. You notice the theme here. Supporting the whole child approach, and this gives our students the foundation they need to become well-rounded, healthy individuals equipped with a solid education and important life skills to help them be successful and to reach their goals. And short-term, I love the inclusion and special needs and diversity. That's something that I think we can address short-term. And also smaller class sizes. I think that they help with greater mental health resources and staffing and help the needs of students, creating a positive school environment based on these stronger relationships. And I feel that they need that safety and belonging in order to thrive in school, and smaller class sizes can promote that, and it's something that we can do in the short term.
Okay. And so we go on to the next question. And Stuart, you get to be number 1 for question 9. Do you feel it is appropriate for instructors to teach controversial or challenging topics in their classrooms?
That's an easy one, absolutely. Well, that's the job of a teacher. If we can't have these conversations in school, where can we have them? We are doing a disservice to our kids if we're saying, oh no, this is too dangerous to talk about. That's not the purpose of education. The purpose of education is to bring as many perspectives to the student so that they can use their critical thinking skills to decide for themselves. To say that controversial issues shouldn't be discussed in the classroom, I think is short-sighted. And I happen to like to push the button, push the line. I think that's important because I often tell my kids on the first day of school, there are going to be some days you want to hit me in the face. There are going to be some days you're going to be angry with me. And there are going to be some days you're going to be like, thank God I'm in Buelan's class. Because if they don't care what I'm talking about, I'm not getting them. And controversy draws kids in, whether you like it or not, whether anyone else in this room likes it or not. Controversy sells. And it often is the hook to get the kids to learn.
So I think it's important that we define controversial.
Yeah. I guess so. Yeah. What controversial to you may not be controversial to me.
I think that's really important to establish because it goes back to the concept of traditional values. And when we think of traditional values, we have to accept that everyone's traditions have value. That's a really, that's got to be a core belief that we share in order to move forward beyond that, right? So when I think of controversial topics taught in the classroom, I really feel it's the teacher's job to teach the curriculum of that course. And it's not about what to think, but it's how to think that is most important. So what I mentioned, I've shared with you that 2 of my kids have gone on to college, and that's been the most rewarding part of being a mother is the shift in that relationship, because there's so many times I want to step in and I have to just, because they're legal age and they're adults. And I have given them what I can give them. And now I have to let them think on their own. And, I know you teach high school. And so I love your perspective on what you share with your students about how they're going to feel about you. I'm sure as parents, we have days where our kids love us and days where our kids would prefer not to associate with us, right?
Perhaps.
So, yeah, we do have board policy, though. I do just want to emphasize that we have board policy that, that does not allow teachers or staff to go beyond the curriculum with their own concepts and beliefs. It's about teaching our students to be critical thinkers and to give back to our planet.
I do feel, depending on what the topic is, and as long as it's within the curriculum, it's important to engage our students and strike that energy and passion that they may have for a particular topic. I think it's important to let our young population understand that their voice matters and that we can create change as active participants in the community. And one way to do that is to talk about some of these topics and have them question and debate and learn more about these issues at hand.
I want to be in Stuart's class. I also agree it's important to define controversial and understand that that might mean different things
Yes.
to different people. The curriculum is the guiding point, but I think it is, I echo what the other candidate said. It's about learning critical thinking skills, learning how to think on your own, recognizing that well-intentioned people can disagree, and that's okay. And we can move on from those disagreements and have different perspectives. And sometimes from those exchanges, you can learn something about your own position that may not have been as strong as you believed. There are some controversial topics that I think have no other side, that I know schools have gone away from, debating certain issues. I think that's the right thing to do. But I think school is an important place to have those conversations. It has to be grade level appropriate. And if parents in the community have any concerns about those topics, I think there should be opportunities to meet with teachers, to talk about it, find ways where there may be a reaction from a certain cultural perspective or religious perspective, so that can be considered in the discussion.
Thank you. All right, Teresa, you are up to have first answer to question 10. What role do you believe technology should play in the early education classroom?
That's a great question, because that's an example where I've had a large shift in my own beliefs. I was really very much against too much exposure for technology for our students. And I really felt like they get so much screen time at home that when they're at school, I wanted them to be able to make sure that even their recess didn't involve screens. And I still feel that way about recess. I still believe that should be physical activity and socialization, and it's hard to get that on a screen. A few years ago, we showed the documentary Screenagers. We shared that at Casey, I believe. And I appreciate so much the beliefs that were shared in that film. And I still very much would like to say, in an ideal situation, we would limit technology. However, when COVID happened, we became extremely reliant on technology as a means to provide education to our students. It was not ideal, but it was much better than nothing. We had no choice as board members, as much as we tried and as much as we wanted our students back in school in person full time. There wasn't a school district in Erie County that was able to go against the rules of New York State. And so what I might do for my own children as a parent, when I'm on the board, I have to make sure that I'm recognizing that these are everyone's children. And it's not just my money, it's everyone's money. So I still feel that technology has a very important role in middle school and high school. I would like to see that expanded. We have some phenomenal courses at the high school level, computer applications, advanced computer applications. And I know my kids have been able to receive college credit for high school computer-based courses that they took here.
I have a computer science degree. I work for a technology company. We work collaboratively together with each other and alongside students to explore new avenues of learning, new environments, new approaches to working, and sharing is essential if we want technology to be an effective tool to transform knowledge. but balance is the key. I also think people should be outside as much as possible, and be active and learn through our environment. But we can look for opportunities for students to produce rather than consume, and to be interactive and creative.
Technology in early education, I think, can be a very useful tool to support certain students that have needs that can be addressed through technology resources. But I do think that technology was introduced to our early learners too soon because of the pandemic. And I think that there's a need to teach internet safety, maybe as a push-in program for children to understand what it means to be on the internet, how it works. I apparently have a hacker of a 6-year-old that knows how to get to YouTube from Google Classroom. So that was something that we learned together. And social media awareness, especially for our younger middle schoolers who have been, utilizing technology with some consistency since 3rd grade, and understanding what it means when you put something out there, and when it's safe to do it. So I do think it was a little bit premature, more than it was earlier than I would have wanted to see as a parent. I understood the necessity of it. And I think we do need to address some concerns that could happen as a result, an unintended consequence of introducing it too soon.
I don't mean to be flippant, but when your phone breaks or your computer doesn't work, who's the one you turn to? It's not your wife or your husband. It's your 5-year-old or your 8-year-old, right? Technology is not going away. But listen, in a classroom, it has to be one of many things. It can't be the only thing. It has to be a tool in your toolbox, but it's not going away. And the kids need to know how to use it. Look, all of our jobs, even as my teacher, I remember when I started as a teacher, a mimeograph machine. I bet you remember that.
Already.
Now, my classroom's all digital. It's just the reality. And yes, they have to be aware of the dangers of social media, and there have to be limits, but they're going to have to use it every day moving forward. So I think it has to be in the classroom. It's just up to the teacher how to use it and become a tool in the toolbox, not the only thing.
Okay. All right. And so next is question 11, and it goes first to Christina. Do you believe the Williamsville Central School District does enough to recognize and safeguard students from marginalized communities?
I think we can always do more. I think there's always room for improvement. And again, having the teachers and parents and upper level administrative staff go through training for these types of things, I think would be beneficial, because there's, like I said, there's always room for improvement that we can do.
Yeah, as my personal experience, I don't have a lot of information or perspective on this. So this would be something that I would have more questions than answers. I'd want to understand where this question is coming from, if there were experiences of a particular student or community member that fueled this question, and try to understand if there was a policy that could be implemented or amended in order to address it. I've seen a very diverse group of students and communities in my own experiences at Heim Elementary and Middle. I haven't seen any indication of this, but obviously from the question being asked, it tells me that there is some concern that I'd want to know more about.
As a father of a special ed child, my biggest fear was when he went to North, whether he was going to be bullied, made fun of, put in a corner. And the atmosphere, at least at North, I can't speak for all the high schools, has been tremendous on that part. The kids have been very welcoming. There have been some opportunities. But again, I think we can do better. And there are other marginalized communities besides special ed that we have to look at. And again, it's all about being inclusive, seeing everyone is important. Everyone has a role. You just can't leave one group out. You have to include everyone. We're better when everyone's involved.
At the retreat that I spoke of our board doing recently, it was with two of our district leaders, Dr. Dabate, who is one of our directors in special education, and Ms. Rouet, who's one of our instructional specialists here in the district. And one of the pieces that I walked away with was what they said about marginalized communities. And it really stuck with me because it was also brought up during our community forum. And I remember during the community forum, I didn't know how to answer it. And there's such hesitation for me personally as a white woman from the suburbs to answer a question like that, because I feel like, who am I to speak about that? What right do I have to speak about that? And what I learned was that you're not a marginalized voice just because you don't get what you want. But you are a marginalized voice when that discontent or discrimination or not being heard is a result of your identity, which I think was really important to distinguish. And so, are we doing enough? No, of course not. But I'm so proud that we're starting, because there's so many districts hesitant to start because they don't want to get it wrong. The majority of our teachers are white, and it's difficult to have those conversations because we don't feel adequate to speak on things that we haven't walked through. But through professional development, we're learning about things like windows and mirrors, and being able to share whether something is something you relate to or something you can have empathy and understanding for because you look through someone else's lens. So I'm really proud that that work is starting, and I'm proud that it's going to involve committees at each building.
Love that.
Thank you. And now we are on to questions 12. And our first person to answer will be Jessica. Given the new developments being built in the district, how do you believe the district should prepare for this influx of students, particularly in areas in already crowded elementary schools?
Yeah, I believe the last board meeting, the district was planning on utilizing an outside consultant to understand what the impact would be on enrollment, because prior projections indicated a decline in enrollment based on a loss of students that were seeking out other educational models, not public education. So I think it would require some due diligence on the part of this outside source to understand who is coming into these communities. Are they electing public school? And would we need to address space concerns as a result? There are, I believe, certain capital improvement projects going on, especially in the elementary schools. We have been challenged for space before, which COVID explained to us many times. So we have to think about, potentially renting trailers. And I had a trailer in my fourth grade. I still remember it because it was the only thing air conditioned in my public school. So we always wanted to be in the trailer. But thinking about creative use of space, we might not have a lot of building space, but maybe we have land space we can add trailers to, and really understanding what the needs are going to be long-term by use of this study.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. Until we have the data, I'm not sure we can answer that intelligently. All those solutions probably will work. Again, if we have an influx of students, class sizes will be affected, and ideally the smaller the class size, the better. And you might end up having to hire more staff, which is never a bad thing, to have more teachers working and helping your students. But again, without the data, I don't think I can actually answer that question intelligently.
So I appreciate Jessica's answer because she spoke about the capital improvement project, and you're absolutely correct about us considering looking at a different firm for enrollment. But I think we have to think about going back to advocating for funding, because we've already shown that we can put up new spaces physically pretty quickly when we have the community support. We've got beautiful new music additions at all three of our high schools. That was done very quickly, and they're gorgeous, right? So it's not really a matter of being able to put up the physical space. It's a matter of being able to fund the staff. And so we need to look at we have to go back to the fair and equitable funding and the foundation formula, which the average citizen doesn't understand. I had no knowledge of what that meant before I was on the board. And it's complicated and long. And even when I was speaking with the aide from Senator Rath's office, he had no knowledge that our data was from the year 2000 instead of recent census data. So making sure that we are able to provide the funding. Yes, if enrollment goes up, we'll have a little bit more of a tax levy, but it's often not enough because of the high inflation rates to cover the costs of health insurance and benefits for our staff. So that funding piece is going to be extremely important that we partner with together for advocacy.
I would agree that some strategic planning obviously needs to take place based on knowing what that impact would be and knowing the numbers, approving our budget obviously would be helpful. If we are to that short-term goal that I spoke of keeping small class sizes, if we're to, adhere to that, what would that look like with our schools with an increased enrollment? So really taking a deeper dive into the numbers and what that looks like, the age groups of the children, where they're going to school, all that obviously matters, and then we can make informed decisions that way.
All right, and so now we come to Stuart, who will be the first person for question 13. The majority of the Board of Education will have 2 years or less of experience next year. What challenges do you feel this may raise?
That's a great question. Just because the candidates don't have a lot of experience doesn't mean they don't bring knowledge. I think that, first of all, a good leader takes some time to get to know the people and the things and the problems that they're facing. But I think that each of us brings our own strengths and weaknesses and the ability to handle the problems. I think that in any new job, there's a growing in period. It takes a couple minutes. You're not going to know it perfectly. You're not going to know everything. But struggle makes you better. It's not how you fall down, it's how you get up. And I think that it's just a question of getting to know more, and then you'll be okay.
I think it's a legitimate concern. However, given that I'm the only incumbent, I think it's inevitable. And I do agree with Stuart's perspective. I think if you have the willingness to learn, you're going to be able to do it. The minimum requirements to be on the Board of Education are pretty pathetic, right? You have to be 18 years old, be able to read and write, and be a citizen and a resident. So I'm really impressed by the credentials of our panel up here, and I have no worries about being able to work effectively on behalf of all of our students in the future. But that piece about honoring the commitment is something that I have seen to be a challenge in the past. I think that the average person doesn't really understand the full commitment that it takes to be on the school board. And when you have multiple children at home and you're in lots of activities, it can be really, really difficult to manage that home, work, school board balance. So I think that I've, over the years, seen many people join very well-intended, but then struggled to be able to honor those commitments.
Motivation, energy, passion. I think all of us have that at this point, which is why we're running for a seat on this Williamsville Board of Education. Bringing innovative ideas, sharp questions, fresh energy, looking at current routines and policies with new eyes and challenging old assumptions, and the opportunity for us to share our perspectives. At the same time, learning how to make a positive difference and working with the board, how to contribute most effectively for lasting change, getting the training that is required and that we can get in these retreats, and committing the time and energy necessary to be an informed and effective leader for our district's missions and beliefs. Thank you.
I think new is good. I think new members with less experience that are in the learning process really dive deep into the why things are the way that they are. That sometimes can get overlooked by others that have been in the seat for a long period of time. This is the same with companies where you have long tenured employees that leave the company and leave behind a legacy of policies and processes that no one understands why they exist anymore, other than to say this is how it was always done. And I think bringing in new perspectives challenges the this is how it's always done, been always done mentality, In terms of honoring commitments, I think, in the time consuming aspect of board membership, I think I'll speak for myself, but as a parent, it's been very time consuming to adapt to hybrid learning with 2 young children. I feel well equipped to handle it at this point, that anything that can be thrown my way, I'll find time for. I think timing is about setting priorities, and you can always find time for something that you make a priority. There's always room in your day. So I think this is important work, and I think it's a priority, and I'm ready to honor a commitment and serve on the board.
Thank you. Teresa, you're first up for this question. How do you believe the district should address the staffing shortages currently impacting our schools and buses?
So there's some short-term and some long-term things that need to be considered. So looking at the long term, we have baby boomers who are aging out. And we also have what was just in one of our mailers that we get as school board members from NYSBA, which is called the Great Resignation. And that's where 55% of educators are leaving education before they can get their optimal retirement. And so, essentially it's due to burnout. So we need to, first of all, make sure that we're treating our staff with dignity and respect, that we're providing support, and that we're paying them appropriately. The short term, I can speak to a few things that have happened this year. So we've had an ongoing issue with a shortage of substitute teachers, which is nothing new to public education. I've covered my plenitude of classes. I'm sure you have as well. We have raised the pay for our substitute teachers here in Williamsville. And we also give a bonus now for the number of days that they work. So if they work a certain number of days, they get a little bump of a pay, which is an incentive for them to take positions here. Because often if you're on a sub list, you're on a list for multiple districts. We have also increased pay for our teacher assistants, and we've settled several of the collective bargaining agreements. We have not yet settled our teachers union agreement. We will hopefully do that soon. In terms of bus drivers, we use for student, and we have been promoting regularly at the beginning of the year, especially when it was the highest incident of problem, with the rate of pay increase from the bus terminal, and just asking if you know of anyone who wants to be a bus driver, here's the application process. Thank you.
As far as the teacher shortages, I think the key is to early recruitment, building relationships with local high schools and colleges, especially those that serve underrepresented students, and try to attract them into the teaching field. Also offering such incentives such as scholarships and mentors, even stipends while they're in college, getting certified with a contract to ensure that they can work for our district for a minimum of 3 years after. Potentially increasing salaries to entice teachers, and to offer transportation, housing, and other incentives to help increase that teacher population. As far as bus drivers, similar to what Teresa stated, just getting the word out, maybe utilizing social media to try to encourage other people in that type of profession. Thank you.
Yeah, the Great Resignation is a problem everywhere, not just in schools. We are seeing it in business, and it's really interesting. It's also called like the Great Realignment, and other jobs are attracting people. They're not resigning and not having another job. They're going to a different field. So what is it about teachers specifically that, is causing the burnout? Well, they've been through a lot the last couple of years in particular. I think the partnership between parents and teachers and the community is strained, at least on a national level. There's a lot of fear and miscommunication and concerns about what's going on in a classroom that no one's been allowed in for the last couple of years. And I think it's just about starting from the beginning and making teaching a rewarding profession, a calling, and appreciating what our teachers do in the classroom. It should not be a combative type of situation. No one, we should really be supporting our teachers. And we need to get more people interested in the field of education, especially in a world where there's so many remote jobs, and teaching is not one of them. The buses is interesting. We had our struggles with the bus several times in the beginning of the school year. We had a lot of late children. So it was frustrating, but I do understand it's contracted out. So there's not a lot in the district's control there. Aside from getting the word out, I think that was a good strategy. We got a lot of flyers home to pass out to help recruit bus drivers. I think that was a smart call.
Okay, thank you.
I think that as far as teachers, you have to start with early recruitment. Make sure they know that they can come teach in Williamsville. Make sure that Williamsville is enticing to teachers. Not every district does a teacher want to go to work in. And you have to make sure that the environment is inviting to teachers. And it does, compensation plays a role in it, but the class milieu, the Board of Education plays a role in it, how the administration and the teachers interact, how the students treat the teachers. And as far as, and by the way, I don't know if you guys know this, the average teaching career is 5 years. We've outlived our usefulness. So teachers drop off very quickly, not dead. Knock on wood. We don't drop dead, but we drop out a lot. And as far as bus drivers, this is a national problem. There were school districts paying teachers overtime to bus students in Kansas, I think. In Buffalo, there are 40 or 45 bus routes a day that are not covered. I know it's a huge problem, and I think the way what we've talked about is getting the word out, and again, it's contracted, so I'm not exactly sure. Hopefully, as the pandemic recedes, more people that were traditionally bus drivers might come back into the workforce. Hopefully, we're not going to die.
So
That'd be bad.
we are now at twice as many questions as they thought would be able to be covered. So, and you folks aren't talking too fast. I have slow ears. Anyway, so the next question is question 15. And Christina, you have the first opportunity to answer. How important do you believe diversity is in the hiring process? And how would you suggest the district achieve a workforce that looks more like the student body?
I would reiterate what I said in the last response to the last question, and early recruitment, going to our high schools and speaking to those kids about the teaching profession, offering stipends and incentives and different things that we can do in other communities to attract people to Williamsville. And I think that would be helpful to attract a more diverse teaching staff in the future.
Yeah, I think it's a question that we've been asked in maybe a different form, but I think there's an immediate, an interim, and a long-term approach to ensuring that we have a diverse teaching staff and administration. The immediate is we first have to identify and address, are there any biases in the hiring and advancement processes here in the district to see if that is a barrier. And then in the interim, establish and maintain an inclusive culture where diversity can thrive. So even if you hire the diverse teachers, if the environment is not conducive to retaining them, they will leave. So that's important too. Some real internal work needs to be done, and honest questions need to be asked about what our culture looks like at the school and whether it is actually attracting and retaining that talent. And long-term, I think we should invest in the next generation by providing resources and support to current students that are interested in pursuing a future career in education. We sort of have an advantage as a school where we can create programs and opportunities. Maybe a student takes over a classroom for a day. That could be fun, right, Stuart? And see if they like teaching and if it's something for them. Maybe there's a program that we could create to incentivize long-term strategy for bringing in students that want a future career in education. And we've said this before, but representation matters. If students can see and engage with teachers that look like them, they can see themselves in that role one day. This is not just a Williamsville issue. This is a nationwide issue.
First of all, education programs are shrinking. If you look at the people who apply to them, they look a lot more like me than other people in this room, and that's a problem. And that is just not entirely Williamsville's fault. But Williamsville has to be proactive. They may have to go start recruiting outside of Buffalo, go to different places that may offer different candidates. I think that's really important that we look at going to diverse places, just not UB, Buff State, and Canisius. And it's not an easy solution because it's a national problem. It's just not a Williamsville issue. And again, inclusion matters. I agree with you. It's so important for people, everyone, to see themselves in the classroom so they can feel like they have some ownership in it. But again, there's no easy answer. I can't answer it here tonight. I mean, it's going to take time.
So I think there's two parts to it. I think part of it is respecting and speaking about teaching as an admirable profession to enter. Speaking about our teachers as educated professionals and recognizing that they hold master's degrees and have studied the pedagogy and the hands, head, and heart that I spoke of earlier. Paying them well, I believe, is extremely important. If we look at starting teacher salaries, they're still in the mid $40,000 range when you need to have a master's degree. There's other fields that are going to look a lot more enticing because I am looking at my daughter who's graduating in December and I'm seeing what she's being offered. It's nowhere clear to what a teacher is going to be offered. In terms of the diversity piece, however, this was a priority of our school board when we were in the selection for our current superintendent. And it was one of the specific questions we asked during the finalist round. And we were most satisfied and impressed with the answers that Superintendent Dr. Brown-Hall provided to us as a board. And this was last year's school board that did that selection. Having fresh ideas with new partnerships was very enticing to us as a board. And we know that Superintendent Brown-Hall comes with a lot of experience and connections from across the state and across the country. And so I am hopeful that we will continue to strengthen current partnerships and seek out new partnerships in the coming years. We do already have in place strong partnerships with several of our colleges and universities. Buffalo State College provides a lot of our student teachers here in Williamsville, and we get a lot of students from New York City that come to Buffalo State. Many times, though, they do go back or go on elsewhere. So also just making Buffalo enticing. I think Buffalo is an amazing place to live. I've lived here my whole life, but we have to get that word out and value it here.
The last question. So if you want to take a deep breath, all right, then you'll be able to take a deeper breath before you make your closing. Okay, Jessica. What are some historical decisions made by the board that you would like to go back and tweak if given a chance?
Had to be the last question. I think all right. So I think the Wednesday remote days for elementary kids, I would tweak. I think that there was an opportunity to bring kids back in person that elected the hybrid schedule, not the remote schedule. On alternating Wednesdays sooner rather than later. I think that was a big opportunity. I think repurposing teachers that were specialized reading teachers or into classroom teachers to really maximize the opportunities to provide more classroom space would have been something to consider. Renting trailers to increase the footprint of our schools, especially in elementary students. We're seeing now that some of the key learning loss is in K through first and second grade. I think concentrating on those grades would have been a tweak that I would have made and prioritized them to get them back into a full-time learning program sooner.
That's a difficult question. And yeah, it had to be the last one. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I think it's probably the way remote learning went down. Just the how that just sort of got sprung upon us as parents. And I think we, as parents and as teachers and everybody else, I think we would have liked a little more heads up. I I guess that's the biggest thing. I think that decision, I think, probably brought most people here tonight, to be honest with you.
So I think it's important to be reflective and say that decisions are made with the information that's available at that time. And hindsight is always 2020. If I could go back and change anything, it would be the opening week of 2020. As a board member, I was sitting at home watching the opening plan, version 1, 2, and 3, along with everybody else. And it was very disappointing to see that the plan was not well thought out and it was constantly changing. And inevitably, it's what caused us to make the decisions that we had to make with our special meetings and with our change in leadership. So I think obviously, once there was a investigation with a full report, a lot was learned afterwards that board members had no knowledge of while they were happening. So that's something that still haunts me, that I wish we could have done differently, but I only could act on what I knew at the time. I just want to always say though, it's so important to live in the present moment. And I feel that whether I'm reelected or not, that I am leaving this district better than I found it. And that was my only intention for running in the first place. So I respect whatever the decision is from our voters. I understand the angst from reopening. That was my son's senior year of high school. There was no way I would have wanted him to not be in school every single day and have every experience that many other students received. But I was a parent along with everybody else, and the decisions that we would have liked to have been able to make we were not able to make at the board level, not in Williamsville and not anywhere else.
I am an extremely involved parent. My son's classes and schools and sports. I love being a part of his classroom. I love going in and helping with lunch. And one of the things I definitely would tweak is the vaccination requirement to enter the schools, to be able to help the teacher and be a part of my son's day in lunchroom and help out with that. So again, looking forward, I hope that type of situation doesn't happen again. We need to be inclusive of those that decide to vaccinate and those that do not. And just to be there to help the teachers and to be there for our children. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all for everything that you put into all the answers. And now each of you will have 2 minutes to make a closing statement. And we'd work in reverse order from the opening statements. So Jessica, you get to go first.
Hey. Okay. Thank you to the community for your thoughtful questions. I'm grateful for the opportunity to learn more about the concerns of district stakeholders. Public education at its core is grassroots democracy. It belongs to all of us, not a single group, association, or political party, all of us. The New York State School Board Association identifies several attributes of effective board members, which include effective communicator, consensus builder, decision maker, leader, and team player. I would add one more, courage. To quote Brene Brown, courage starts with showing up and letting ourselves be seen. I'm here showing up because I believe I can make a meaningful contribution and impact on the board. I have skills, experience, and a perspective not currently represented. The most highly functional teams are made up of diverse perspectives. In order to have meaningful dialogue on the issues, ask challenging questions, and vote independently. I'm an attorney by profession, bound by high ethical standards, and in my current role, I lead a large team and manage a budget. I understand how to read and interpret laws and policies, manage risk, set appropriate priorities through budgeting, and advocate on behalf of our stakeholders. Based on my background, answers, and statement today, I hope I have demonstrated to you that I possess the necessary attributes that I am willing to take the leap from being a critic to a person in the arena advocating for programs and policies that support the best interests of our community. Our district needs a clean slate, and most of all, it needs strong leadership to move us forward. This is personal to me as a parent, especially of a young learner. With many more years of public education ahead, we can do better and we must. I'm an independent voice ready to serve this community. I'm open to learning and listening, and I will work hard to earn your trust. I urge you to vote on May 17th based on your own evaluation of the candidate's attributes and motivations, as well as what's important to you and your family. I look forward to having the opportunity to represent this community as a board member. Thank you.
As we all know, the Board of Education plays a critical role in determining the policy that will improve the education and wellness of all of our children. I recognize we are fortunate to live in a community where education is paramount, but each year we face tough decisions on how to allocate our resources. Each year we face decisions like which programs will be funded or cut, do we propose new initiatives or not, and finding the right programs that will help our students and teaching staff. If elected as a member of the Williamsville Board of Education, I will ask in-depth questions about policy and programs so that we, as a community, understand the value they will bring to the classroom. I will encourage the proposal of new initiatives to improve the education and health and wellness of our children. I will listen to and reflect the concerns of our community and work collaboratively with fellow board members to improve our schools. I am honest, open, and caring, and determined to do what is beneficial for the students and teachers of our district. Being trustworthy and showing compassion and empathy for those around me go a long way in building trust where parents believe their children are in good hands. I feel together we can find creative solutions to address those challenges while maintaining the superior quality of education we have come to expect. I am hopeful that with fresh eyes and a new perspective, the next few years will produce cost-effective innovations and new initiatives that promote diversity, learning, and student wellness. I am committed to continued improvements and to taking our whole school and whole child approach to a higher level. It would be an honor to serve on the Williamsville Board of Education. I ask you for your vote on May 17th, and thank you for your time you've given me this evening.
I am one of 9 with no authority as an individual under the law. However, my name is listed on the record as a yes for the following: elementary school recess policy, DEI policy, gender identity policies, strategic planning, athletic field completions, music additions at all 3 high schools, new secure school entrances in progress, maintaining all educational programs for the past 6 years of our budget, adding assistant principals to aid with social emotional learning at our elementary schools and 2 middle schools, adding STEAM labs and teachers at each of our elementary school, and adding learning labs and teachers at each of our high school. What I am most proud of is my leadership through the 2020-2021 school year. It was very challenging to be the president at the height of the pandemic. I am part of a dynamic team, and I want to emphasize that. However, I did lead our board through a separation from one superintendent and manage the selection, contract, and hiring of our current superintendent. There was a lot that went on behind the scenes, and I was the go-to person for much of it. Though very difficult given the timing, I am proud of the inclusive search process, and I'm confident that we are in a much better place. I am available, reliable, knowledgeable, and a team player. I am efficient, calm, and a strong communicator. I have high standards and a good sense of humor. Our children are amazing, and they deserve everything we do for them. Let's keep it going. I ask for your vote on Election Day on Tuesday. Please vote 2A. Be well. Thank you.
Okay, so we've all said a lot of stuff tonight, and I've said my share. This all comes down to student outcomes. We are here for the kids. That's all that matters. The kids and the outcomes and the teachers and how to help them get the best, and the parents so the parents can achieve. So the parents can see their students achieve. That's what matters. All this other stuff is sort of sugarcoating, right? It's the sugar high you get while you're sitting here. But in the end, what matters is you got to vote for the person or the people who you think will help students get the outcomes that you want and desire. That's all that matters. Everything else is window dressing, to me at least. And yeah, I would like your vote. If you think I'm the person, great. That's the bottom line though. Student outcomes and students being successful. That's all that matters. Everything else is just sugarcoated. Thank you.
I want to thank everyone for being here. I want to thank everyone for the questions that you posed. And I especially want to thank the 4 people sitting here who have spoken from their hearts and their minds, and with a great deal of thought and consideration. I would have a very difficult time choosing only 3 of you to vote for if I were living in Williamsville. So of course, folks, make sure that you vote, make sure that you get your neighbors, your friends, any relatives who are eligible to vote next Wednesday on May 7th, or next Tuesday on May 17. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great.